Do we embrace our Second Amendment rights to bear arms? Yes. Could Bob Huggins end up in Salt Lake City? Maybe. Let's talk about that.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in for the second time today. This awesome episode of Locked On West Virginia. Going to have my buddy on, Locked On Utes host, JT Wistersill, who is just an animal in the booth if you haven't heard him yet. He also supports the right to bear arms. If you didn't know that, let's bring him on. My dude, man, what is up with you right now?
I'm so excited to be on with you, my friend. My Locked On West Virginia debut had to come ready to go, just shredded the sleeves off. So I am all fired up to be talking with you, and what a crazy situation we got going on at Utah. So not a better time. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so speaking of that crazy situation, how many guys get back-to-back interim jobs?
It is insane. Maybe that's even why he decided to come to Utah, as he saw the writing on the walls. He's like, hey, maybe this will happen and I could get moved in here. But yeah, it is. It speaks to his talent as a coach, right? That he has been the lead assistant a couple times. But I will say, I would be shocked if the interim tag was removed and he became head coach. It feels like he's going to be on the look for somewhere else again.
What if he goes on a run? What if he does some cool stuff?
The chance. I felt like Craig Smith had an opportunity to go on the run, but Utah must have felt like they didn't want to risk that. And that's why, who goes from upsetting Kansas State, one loss to UCF, good loss? No. But if we look at how West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast have fared on the season, an understandable one overall. So I didn't feel like it was enough to justify the firing, but it just seemed like, hey, they wanted to move on, and they felt like, if we let him hang around too long and then they go on a run, then we're going to have to keep him. And they didn't want to do that. I disagree with the timing, but it felt like this is where it was going to end up. But it makes the game next week even more fascinating.
It does. And we'll get there because I have to talk about this first. It's on the thumbnail. Obviously, people are coming here to talk about this a little bit. Mm-hmm. If somehow Josh Eilert goes on this run and has his run of the mill next year to pick some guys, is there any way the Bob Huggins could grace the sidelines at a Christian university like Utah?
I cannot, like I said, I think it's a very upward climb for Eilert to be able to keep this interim job taken away to make it something else. I don't see Bob Huggins. I think there's a chance, actually, if anything, like if you were telling me Utah's looking for a big name hire and they wanted to give Huggins a look, I see that more, but also say this. This is a search that seems like it's going to be very heavy on former Utes. They went outside of the box with Craig Smith in terms outside of the Utah man, and they got Craig Smith, and it didn't work out. This seems like a search that wants to find a Utah man. The two names that have been thrown around most prominently are two players that made the Final Four back in the 90s, so that's where it's like that's what they're feeling like right now. But I don't see Bob Huggins getting a look here, but I will say, with his coaching pedigree, it wouldn't be surprised if the name was at least tossed around. I don't think it's a fit at Utah, but when you win, you're going to get opportunities. We've seen it too many times. Rick Pitino's crawled his way back up. There's just been too many examples of this happening for me to say, like, I can't sit here and go, like, there is no way, there is zero chance that will ever happen. I feel like it's highly unlikely, but I do think that if Eilert if he was able to go on a run, I think there's a chance that he could stay and then maybe somehow brings Huggins in, but when we're talking chances, I feel like it's probably less than 3%.
Yeah, obviously this is just a fun conversation. So, I think another thing to talk about here too is like, obviously Eilert graced the sidelines with Huggins for 17 years and learned from him. And probably be a little bit of an uncomfortable thing to reverse that for him if you had to ask me. So I wouldn't expect it either. But certainly I had heard when this happened early the other day that there was a little bit of campaigning going on just in case. Because, people, hey, look, you go on a run, you get that job, remember me, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I was told, there was a little bit of that from the Huggins side. Don't know exactly who pushed that thing out there, but it did get out there. So
Well,
I can see, and I can see that. I think he wants a way back in somehow, some way, and
mhm.
I do think he could help a team, whether that be from as an assistant, or as the head coach. But something tells me his ego just wouldn't allow anything but the head coach.
I agree. I don't think it would. And that's the one thing I'll say that I completely, even though I said, does Huggins to Utah seem likely? No. Huggins' interest in this? Oh, absolutely makes a ton of sense. Of course, he
Yeah.
wants to get back in and the Power Four ranks. Where else is there an opportunity to do that? Miami, I guess. But this is, say it again.
Sorry about that. He knows he was at K-State, so it's not like he's not unfamiliar with that side of the country.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's a good coach, right? There's a reason that he's no
Yeah.
longer employed. As I mentioned, I don't see it fit as Utah, but Huggins' interest in the job makes total sense to me when you look at,
Yeah.
hey, still got that fire, got that competitive nature, wants to get back in, prove he's still got it. There's a Power Four job available. It's tough in the Big 12, as you and I both know too. He's been through this gauntlet before, so if you prove that you could still make it here, like would be still something on his resume. So his interest would make a lot of sense. I do believe, if like you said, I believe that there's interest there. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Utah at least discusses it. But the boosters at Utah, based on initial reports, seem pretty enamored with the idea of a Utah man. So that's where it seems like we're heading in that direction. But I do expect Bob Huggins. I mean, Mountaineer Paul, for you, don't you think he's going to, like the Miami job even? Do you expect him to have interest and try to get at any of these jobs that might come open? Because we're going to see a lot of them start to open up.
Yeah, if I'm being totally real with you, I'd be really shocked if he got one. That's only because if he hadn't made the comments and his health was better, then yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. He's lost a lot of weight, and I know he quit drinking. I don't want to put the narrative out there that he's some decrepit old man. It's just he's 73 now or 72.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you see it, but like a Rick Pitino or a Pete Carroll put off a different energy and vibe than like Bob Huggins does, who, um, I don't know. He just doesn't look great to me, but I think he has a shot at a mid-major, type job, something like that. Absolutely. I don't know about a Power Four gig, man. I think that would be tough.
With NIL, the game is changing so much. That's a lot to have to wrestle with and deal with. We're seeing the coaches like him get out of it, not move to a new job. I totally agree. I think he's going to have interest in a lot of those jobs, but I don't know if it'll work out. And do you think actually you already brought up a little bit like the ego side of things too? Like, would he let himself maybe be a major assistant at one of those, or would he instead want to be?
That would be more likely.
Yeah.
I think that would be much more likely for him. He has so much knowledge to impart.
Yes.
And I went back and looked at some of his coaching tape because he kind of comes off. I don't know how many interviews we've seen with Bob Huggins, but it's he doesn't say a lot. It's very Belichickian. He's an interesting guy. He's actually a very intellectual guy, but his coaching is just like, it's amazing to watch. He really knows how to teach it. He really knows the verbiage he uses and everything, the way he phrases things. I was really impressed. I went because I hadn't seen it in so long. I think maybe since we hired him, and some of his stuff at K-State. There goes my cat.
Oh my gosh,
that's my mascot. She jumps up all the time.
Keep me on my. I like it. I was not expecting that. You got to be ready for the unexpected when you're talking about Mountaineer Paul. I learned on the stories last week, but that was wow. That is an athletic cat. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and there's it's one of those things too where it's like it happens every now and then, and it's like, what am I supposed to do? Punish her for something she does 23 other hours of the day? Like, not like, how am I supposed to teach a cat during this 30 minutes? You can't be here. It's just it's one of those things, like it's got to accept it. Yeah, and I love my cats.
What's the name?
I'm Baby.
Baby, nice.
Yeah, Baby. I call them both Baby. Actually, I know it's lazy. It's lazy. I deserve it. So let's go to a quick break and we'll get into some meaty stuff, because if you guys don't know, JT is a play-by-play guy at Catawba. Am I saying that right?
Catawba College, you are.
Catawba College. And we got a guy from there, if you didn't know, a really good running back, LJ Turner. We're going to talk about that. Also, TCU, we play them tonight. Utah, we play them next. Let's talk about both of those games on a day where it's really fun to talk about basketball. We'll be right back, guys. This is Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is going to be brought to you by, of course, none other than PrizePicks, guys. Thank you guys for watching. March basketball is here. There's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for 29 points and Anthony Davis for 12 rebounds. I love how I can make money with my picks in less than 60 seconds and staying engaged all game long. When I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes. No waiting around. PrizePicks even offers weekly promos like Caco Tuesday, where you can get discounted player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You can do that at PrizePicks. Run your game. And it's segment 2. We got a crack a do, right? Let's do
I'm
that.
not a Mountain Dew guy, but with segment 2 here, I decided to bring along a root beer.
Okay, that's fine. We can do that. And that works. And you cracked it. Sounds good.
Did you take a sip?
I did. I'm
I
quick with it.
Sure.
I'm quick with it, yeah.
You told me that. You don't finish them always, but.
No, I don't. No, actually, no, I don't. And that's my dad used to get really mad at me for not finishing my drinks around the house.
I learned about the tales
I paid for it and you don't finish it. Yeah.
I learned about the tales of Root last week on the squad show.
Yeah. I told a story about my dad on the squad show where my dad called me Root my entire life. You know, Root, come here, Root. Hey, come here, meet this guy, Root. Get out there and cut them weeds, Root. You know, this or that. And I finally just got curious one day because it was a nickname. He called me Spud. He called me all kinds of different things, you know. And so I went up to him and I said, Dad, why do you call me Root? And he's like, yeah, because you're dumb as a tree root, son. You know, and I just thought, wow, I've been answering to that my whole life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So,
I love it.
Yeah, he called me Root all the time. Hey, Root, come here, Root. Get over here, Root. My dad had a prosthetic arm. I told you that. Mm-hmm. He also had a hand like that was crippled all the way up to its wrist. It couldn't bend his wrist. And so what he could do with it is he could barely squeeze his hand like this. And then he could flip his thumb like that. And he would walk behind me and flip me on top of the head with it. And it felt like a shotgun hit me on the top of the head.
It felt like that
all the time he was doing it. He loved inflicting pain on me. One more, his prosthetic arm could crush anything, literally. Like pop can, he could bust it. Okay. Like he had enough pressure in it to bust the pop can open from closed. And anytime he would meet my friends for the first time, he would crank down on that thing, man, and just he would wear people out with that. Yeah. And then there was also all the jokes about his prosthetic. Like one time, this will be the last one. I'll get carried away. I was at a Christian rap event, and the song was saying, "Throw your hands in the air like you do when you rap prayer." Mm-hmm. And I looked over, and my dad had his arm in the air, singing, "I threw my arm over there. It landed over by that chair." Like they had him on the microphone singing this, you know. So he was always joking around about losing that prosthetic arm.
Yeah,
crazy, man.
That's awesome.
How do you transition to this? Is this a good segue? I don't know. TCU, Utah. We play TCU tonight. JT, you guys, have you faced Utah this year? Or I mean, TCU this year?
We did, yes. We actually, I'm trying to remember now, actually. I think we lost to them. Actually, no, we beat them. We did beat them, yes.
You did beat them, yeah. Yep. So this is going to be an interesting game for West Virginia. You know, this is one of those games where it's a little bit of a revenge game for us. We also lost to TCU, and I wasn't extremely impressed with them the first time we played them. I truly wasn't. And for some reason, we still lost that game. And it was one of those games where after the fact, JT, I got on and complained about the referees like for the first 15 minutes of the show. And I actually caught some heck for it. But honestly, it was a horrible game. We lost at 65-60. The free throw differential was insane in that game. What was it? Looking back, it was they shot 23. We shot 2. So it was one of those kind of games, and we were at home. Or no, we were on the road. I'm sorry. So, and this is a game West Virginia obviously needs because that Utah trip, man, everybody's
Mhm.
getting crushed out there on that
It's
YouTube trip
brutal.
or Utah trip.
Mhm. It's incredibly brutal. The thing about playing in Utah that everyone forgets is the altitude difference. It is a much higher altitude. And when you're playing at a higher altitude, you get tired easier. And what happens when you get tired and fatigued? You make more mistakes. And that is what we see happen all the times when these teams head out to Utah. So, yeah, definitely important for West Virginia to try to build that momentum too, because going 2-0 is going to be tough. I will say, I feel right now, West Virginia, I haven't checked that ahead to next week. I got to believe West Virginia is favored right now. This Utah team, whenever you get rid of your coach, right? In some ways, you're punting on the season. So I'm very curious to see how this group and how this team stays together. Is it going to be a team that's like, know what, we have a chance to still make a run in the Big 12 tournament, not the NCAA tournament, the Big 12 tournament? Are we going to do some things, or is it going to be a bunch of I'm going to get mine up my transfer portal value and then get out of here? I think that is a lot of times you're going to see it go one way or the other when you move on from a coach like that, because in some ways Utah gave up this season by moving on from Craig Smith. So it put them in an interesting spot. But yeah, it's really tough to play in Utah. So it would be good for West Virginia to get that big win tonight.
I will say this, JT. I think he's in a way better situation here than he was taking over West Virginia, because I tried to list it several times, but like recently I tried to list it again. I think there is at least I'm embellishing the list. I embellished it the last time I said 30, more like 15. What you would consider major program defining things happen in a season happened to Josh Eilert before we ever tipped off. Bob Huggins got fired. The entire transfer portal class, which was number one in the nation, held us for ransom in August because they knew they could transfer, and when the window wasn't open because Huggins got fired out of nowhere. So he lost literally everyone, and then who did come back wasn't eligible, had to take the NCAA to court to get those guys eligible. Like, it was literally one thing after another. Then when the day they were eligible, our best player, Jesse Edwards, broke his wrist, and that was just the season. Then Jose Perez got kicked off the team, and I could go on and on about stuff. So I think he's in a little better spot here with Utah.
I can't agree, unfortunately. And I will say, when you talk about the totality of the season, like, yes, had Eilert been the coach at the start of the year, I would have agreed. But what did he still have the opportunity to do at West Virginia? He had a full season to build out his resume and try to prove that he's a guy. He has 4 games to try and prove that he's the guy and whatever he's going to get in the Big 12 tournament. And in that 4-game sample, he has to play Arizona, who's ranked, in that game also on the road. So that's going to be tough tomorrow night. And then you have to go to BYU, who is now also ranked. So you have 2 ranked games, one of those being against a rival who you already beat one time too. You get Arizona State at home. That should be a win. That West Virginia game is going to be incredibly tough. You guys already got us once, right? 72-61. But I feel like that is such a thin margin for error. Like you mentioned, like, he was in a brutal spot to start the season, but as no matter what, he had that large of a sample size where Kirk Risa, Raekwon Battle, those guys last year still able to eventually come back. It did not materialize. We know that. But I don't know what success looks like. Like, does he have to win, like you said, make the NCAA tournament somehow? Like, it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle for him to keep this job. And I don't like this because I like Craig Smith a lot. There is a bad vibe around the Utah basketball program, and I do not think most of that's on Craig Smith. I think he's a good coach, but he made recruiting mistakes, and I think people want to go in a different direction. They want to get themselves removed from the Craig Smith era. Even though Eilert just joined this last year, he's still now a part of the Craig Smith portion of this, and I feel like everyone at Utah feels like it's time to turn the page and for a fresh chapter. So barring almost winning, like I said, an NCAA tournament berth and winning a couple games, I just feel like it's going to be really hard for him to prove he's the guy for the job. I mean, like I said, Mountaineer Paul, I just listed off some of the opponents they had. Like, what do you see Utah finishing there? Knowing you've seen this Utah team a little bit, like, they are not world beaters. Yes, they're 10th in the conference, but they're not a juggernaut.
Yeah, I think obviously Arizona's a loss. I think you beat Arizona State because they just lost, obviously, BJ. So, and then you get us, that's a loss. And then you got BYU in the Holy War. Who knows what will happen in that game? Being that it's at BYU and they're maybe the hottest team in the country right now. Well, not in the country, but definitely in the Big 12. They're in that conversation. I see what you're saying. 1-3 is looking about like the best you might do. I think West Virginia, you could beat us. I'm not saying you can't. let's talk about that really well. We're at 1952. Let's go to a quick break. We'll talk about our game, the Eilert portion of this, just how crazy this is. Then we'll talk about LJ Turner. We'll be right back, guys. 6-second break. And we are here with JT Wistersill from Locked On Utes, guys. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe his content. Where can everybody find you really quick? We're right around 200 deep if you count X and YouTube.
Yeah, you guys can head over to my personal account on X at JT Wistersill. Show is at Locked On Utes, and we have a Twitter handle as well. And always enjoy working with my guy Mountaineer Paul on our squad shows each week. He's not on this one, unfortunately, but we are excited to get him back in the near future. I did still make a prediction about something that Mountaineer Paul would do on that show. So if you are curious to hear what that is, make sure you tune in Thursday.
Sounds like a good time. So let's talk about this really quick, and then we'll get to LJ.
Yeah.
Just how weird is it that Josh Eilert's going to coach against West Virginia in a game, not even a year after he was coaching with West Virginia. And it's like, we just seen him a few weeks ago in Morgantown on the sidelines, but it's way more real now that he will be actually coaching. I think this makes it weird for West Virginia, not only when you're on the road at Utah, but I think it's going to be advantage Utah on that night. I don't know about for the rest of the season, but I think advantage Utah on that night. He's probably going to have the guys ready to roll in that game.
That I totally agree. I do think these players, look, especially in the transfer portal era, these guys, yes, they choose a school in part for the NIL, but then you get to grow and build a relationship with these coaches over the season. The Utah players will know how much this will mean to him. So they're going to give it their all when this matchup happens. And I think that also there's just that extra motivation added to, and Utah did lose the last time. Sometimes when you lose the first time, that does give you a better advantage in the second time. Cause if you win in some ways, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is our game plan. This is what we'll do against them. But now for Utah, they could be like, this is what didn't work. This is what we're going to do as the counter. Exactly. Yeah. And I do think that West Virginia it's a strong basketball history tradition. So I think there will be Utah fans who look at this and go, hey, even though we're kind of giving up on the season away because they fired Coach Smith, it's one of the last few opportunities we get to see cheer on the team. And we're playing a brand like West Virginia. That's fun and exciting to me. So I do expect Utah to show up decently well for this one, as well as they could under the circumstances of the coach moving on. But I do feel like it's an advantage Utah in a couple ways, especially just from, hey, even though it is coming down to the last few regular season games, it's a long regular season. It's on the road in Utah. We already talked about the altitude a little bit, and these guys are going to want to get the win, because in a season that I don't know how many moral victories this team has left in them, beating West Virginia would absolutely be one for their new coach and Eilert, the interim tag.
Yeah, if he wants to get the job, this would definitely be the one game he wants to win going out the door. Yeah. So let's transition now, guys. If you didn't know, LJ Turner, by the way, and you'll know this too because you play against Limestone, right?
I do.
Okay, so
I didn't.
Trey Stewart, the running back from Limestone, Rich Rod brought him to Jacksonville State, made him the number 1 rusher in America last year, or number 2, and so he went right back to that same well. A team that plays against Limestone, a guy he saw play against Limestone, LJ Turner, very similar player to Trey Stewart.
Yes, no, 1000%. And I mean, LJ is just a beast, Paul. I mean, this is a guy who
did you want him in Utah?
I would have loved him in Utah, honestly. Yeah, I do feel like they made out well. We got Wayshawn Parker. He's a really good running back from Washington State. But look, LJ's guy, I'm very excited to see what he can do, making the jump from Division II to D1. He only played in 8 games last year, yet he was an absolute just monster. He actually didn't even start the season as their lead back. He kind of worked his way to that level after the first game. He only had 4 carries, but he had 74 yards, and we were like, wait a minute, this guy is kind of different. So even though he only played in 8 games, this is what he was able to do. He was an AFCA All-American second team, earned a spot on the D2Football.com 100 list. He broke the Catawba and South Atlantic Conference single-season rushing record with 1,229 yards on 174 carries with 13 touchdowns. Tallied 500-yard rushing games, including at least 150 yards in each of those games, including, 1,000%. He broke the record, 329 yards, program history for 5 touchdowns in the OT win over Anderson, was on the call for that. His 153 rushing yards per game ranked 2nd in Division II. So had he kept it up for a full season, I can only imagine the numbers he would have put up too. And his 14 total touchdowns led the league once again in only 8 games. LJ
That
Turner
is
was
insane.
a dog.
So, okay, we see the numbers. You see guys put up numbers a lot, and
Yeah.
then they don't translate. Talk about what kind of athlete he is. What is his style? I know what I saw, but I want
Yeah.
to hear it from you.
I think he is his vision is fantastic. Like we had a
Right.
really good offensive line at Catawba last year. So when you were able to pair his vision with that offensive line, it was just incredible because his yards after contact were fantastic, but he wasn't getting contact until 3 yards downfield too. So
Right.
then what he was able to do is able to average like 6 or 7 yards per carry because he's also able to bounce off those tackles. He is an elusive guy too. He was a home run hitter. He broke some big runs off for Catawba this last season. He's not as much of a receiving back. He is more of your prototypical first and second down guy. I think he could be more of a receiving back, but more the first and second down guy last year, and just is a guy who has that speed toughness. He's not the biggest, but he will run through you. He can go around you as well, shakes off tackles, incredible contact balance. I'm a huge fan of LJ. Got to talk with him and obviously call all his home games. So he is a absolute monster. Incredibly excited to see what he can do for West Virginia because I do think he is capable of putting up numbers behind that offensive line.
Yeah, especially in a Rich Rod offense that obviously that's what they do, right? They run a very run heavy, kind of Gus Malzahn-ish type scheme, except Rich Rod is the father of this scheme. Literally the father of this scheme. He's the guy that made it. He brought it to college, which is why we were so good in the 2007, 8, 10, all those years whenever he had us on the fringe in the national championship. So it's going to be really fun to see a guy like LJ Turner in this offense. What I saw is a guy that's very decisive. He's a one-cut guy. He loves to get upfield, but he does have great vision, like you said, and he does have some elusiveness to him when he needs it. Does he like to make the one cut and get upfield? Absolutely. But can he make a guy miss in the hole? Absolutely. So I think he does a lot, and really very similar to a Trey Stewart from Limestone. But that's probably.
Where do you have him on the depth chart right now? Where do you feel like he's
third? Yeah, he's going to
third?
be third starting out, and he could work his way up. Obviously, Jaheim White coming back is huge for their offense. And then we got another kid out of Northern Iowa who 6'4", 240 pounds, a monster player that we were really excited about, that I even said a couple times, Jaheim White better look over his shoulder and not falter, because this kid Edwards is really, really good. So, but I do think LJ Turner will get carries. Absolutely, he's going to get carries. I'd say he'll probably get 75 or more in year one. If something happens and he moves up the ranks, he could go way up because Rich Rod wants to run it. That's just what we want to do. And he's got to have 3 backs.
Mm-hmm. And he was a bell cow last year. I mean, oh my goodness. They would give him the ball over 25 times, it felt like, every game. Like, he was constantly being asked to tout the rock, and he stepped up. He would, sometimes come out for a play or two, and there was a noticeable drop off. And Catawba had some good other backs, but there was a noticeable drop off when LJ was in the game. And that's nothing against those other backs. That's strictly talking about just how good LJ Turner was. When we talked about all the things, the speed, the acceleration, the strength, the contact balance, this guy was incredible. Even though he's only 5'9", I feel like he absolutely fits the profile of someone who has earned the opportunity to make the step up to the D1 level. Is he a D1 bell cow back? Probably not, just with what the extra step in physicality, but can he be a guy who will be ready when he gets his carries? And if he does get a couple on a drive, will be more than willing to deliver. I do believe LJ can be that for the Mountaineers this season.
One quick thing on it too. I think the fact that Rich Rod went to that well last year and had such great success with the Trey Stewart. Yeah. LJ Turner, Trey Stewart. Keep getting their names with Trey Stewart from Limestone. I think, going back to that well, he feels comfortable there. This is a guy he chose. He's not, Jaheim White's obviously, he had a freshman All-American season, even though his season wasn't as good as we hoped for last year. We know the talent's there. I still think that this kid Turner is going to get some carries. It's going to be fun to see. Guys, make sure you go seek out and follow, subscribe, the whole thing with JT, man. He does an excellent job over there. He does this professionally as a play-by-play guy and as somebody I have a massive respect for. So if you guys could just do me a favor and go follow JT. As a matter of fact, I'll do a giveaway on it. The first 100 people to follow JT after this episode, I'll check it by way of JT, and I'll follow it in a couple other ways. If we can track it, I'll do a giveaway. I'll do a $20 giveaway on Cash App or wherever you get your money. And we'll see how many people we can get over there on Locked On Utes.
You're the best, Paul. Thank you so much. Great finally getting on with you, man. Can't wait for our football crossover this fall, too. Utah and West Virginia, now conference mates, still crazy, but always enjoy recording with you. You do a fantastic job, and can't wait to be doing it again with you soon. This is a lot of fun. Thanks again, Paul.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to have you on here, man, guys. We will see you on the next one. Before we go, got to ask you, thanks for linking Locked On West Virginia and Utah, your first listen. But if you can do us a great big old favor, Locked On College Basketball is where it's at, man. Isaac Shade and Andy Patton, they do it big. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll see you on the next one, guys. It's going to be a big game for the Mountaineers tonight as TCU comes to town. Got to have it. Got to hold serve on home court. I'll talk to you after the game, guys. See you then. Bye, JT.
See you.